Boy, you got a fancy apartment there, Carmen.
You like that?
Yeah.
You know, I was in a hurry the other day when I had another meeting, and I'm like, what happened to my original screensaver? And it was gone. But it was like, yeah, so I decided to go a little funky.
There you go.
So Megan, did you get any sleep last night? Or are you still like flying high?
That was absolutely wild. I have never like the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it was like I was driving home from Sioux Falls, and I am sure that people thought I had car trouble because I would pull over to read a text, I would lose my audio, I would get back on the road, get my audio back. Yeah, it was like it took me a really long time to get home from Sioux Falls yesterday.
Yeah, we have a lot of thank you letters to write. That was crazy. But thank you so much for your support, Carmen. And Justin, your testimony was pretty great. Tourism good.
Airport's good. Support.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Justin.
Yeah, no, my contribution was definitely behind the scenes, not during the committee testimony. And we'll talk in a minute about all that work and the team effort that went into this. So. And I am glad that you enjoyed the testimony. I mean, that morning I had to be in 3 different committee hearings at the same time on 3 different bills. So I came running back into the room, asked somebody, as I forget who it was who was on remote testifying. I said, are they still on proponents? So I knew there was limited time, that the committee chair, Scott Odenbach, is very religious about keeping to limited time. So I just got up there and said, well, TCSD, airport's good, travel good, tourism good, thank you. And everybody laughed. Scott Odenbach said, that is the best testimony we've heard all year.
It brought some much needed laughter to the room. So yes.
You know,
Okay.
yesterday morning received an email from the governor's office, more or less saying that the bill is going down. So I think everyone was pretty surprised that it didn't.
Well, Carmen, you want me to go ahead and start talking?
Yes, please. But before we do, I want to publicly thank you, Justin. You have been absolutely amazing this year. I'm sure you've been amazing all other years too, but this has been kind of a crazy year. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, no, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Carmen makes my job so much easier. I mean, as a lobbyist, being able to focus on the work in the halls of the Capitol is extremely important. You get so much more bang for your buck with your lobbyist if I am not having to sit down every few hours and write another email or send another report or keep everybody posted. So Carmen's work is instrumental in the success that we have had. I cannot emphasize that enough. So I'll start by talking about Senate Bill 76, the airports bill. This was a huge win, and I'm going to try and be careful because I do. I want to make sure that we understand this was the governor's bill. It was proposed and filed as a governor's bill, but TCSD and many other groups have been working for the last 3 years on this issue and trying to get more money. for the Sioux Falls and Rapid airports because, again, over 95% of the air travel for South Dakota is out of those two airports, period. So they are crucially important. We've got to update them. So while the governor's office is the one that filed it, we really have been working it very, very hard. And this week, we were convinced that it was going to die in the House State Affairs Committee. Last week, we had asked the Speaker if he would please consider transferring the bill to the Transportation Committee in the House, where we thought we could get it amended back from 2% interest on the loans back down to 0% interest on the loans, which is far, far better for the airports. That being said, at the end of the day, we became convinced there was no way that was going to happen. The bill would not have passed without some interest going back to the state. So we went into the House State Affairs Committee meeting on Wednesday?
Yes. Yes.
Wednesday morning, convinced it was dead. However, Greg Jameson from Sioux Falls worked incredibly hard on Representative Les Heineman from Flandreau. He had 70 people contacting Heineman to encourage him to switch his vote to a yes. And then the Rapid City, everybody in Rapid City and the Black Hills bombarded Scott Odenbach, the majority leader and chair of House State Affairs. So, I mean, I'm sitting there, and when they start counting the votes on the do pass motion, I stood up to walk out of the room because the votes weren't there. And then Odenbach says that motion, having received majority vote, passes. I looked at, and everyone's standing up and celebrating, and I looked around and said, what did I miss? They said Heineman and Odenbach both voted yes. I said, okay. So that's when I found out the story of what happened behind the scenes. All right. In the Senate, Tony Van Huysen, as the lieutenant governor, presides over the Senate. He made the ruling that because this money is already in the Housing Infrastructure Fund, it's already been appropriated, and these are loans, not expenditures. It does not require a 2/3 majority in order to pass the Senate. So the bill passed the Senate on a vote of 22-11. Would not have passed the Senate if it had required a 2/3. When it gets over to the House, John Hanson made it widely known that he was going to rule that it required a 2/3 majority to pass. We disagreed with that decision. It conflicted with the Senate decision on the same issue. And last year, a very similar bill for the Douglas School District, John Hanson ruled that that only required a simple majority. He disputed that. He said that was the wrong decision last year. I committed an error. This is the right decision. So we knew after it came out of the committee that we had an uphill battle, and we were positive that we did not have the 47 votes in the House we would need. But when I tell you that we worked it hard, I mean there were at least 8 to 10 lobbyists working in favor of the airports bill, not including people from the governor's office, Municipal League, Economic Development Professionals, TCSD, 2 lobbyists for the airports. And that doesn't even include all of the people who've been emailing legislators constantly from Sioux Falls, Rapid, and other parts of the state. So thank you all for doing that. Instrumental in getting that bill passed. So at the end of the day, we were working it aggressively Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. And our pitch to the legislators was, please support Senate Bill 76. And if and when a motion is made to overrule the Speaker's decision that it requires a 2/3, please support that motion. The governor's office, and I'm not saying anything that, it's 100% true. The representatives of the governor's office approached us both by text and in person and urged us to please stop pushing to overrule the Speaker's ruling. The main reason for that is because Senate Bill 96, which was the next bill on the agenda yesterday after Senate Bill 76, is the governor's big property tax piece this year, which gives counties the ability to put a half penny on sales tax to pay for property tax relief. They wanted absolutely nothing to jeopardize that bill. However, we, the boots on the ground for our clients, the tourism industry, and everybody else, said, no, respectfully, we are going to push for our strategy because we do not have 2/3. So we pushed for it. We worked it constantly for the last 2 days, and we got it by one vote. They overruled the speaker's decision. Representative Jack Colbeck from Sioux Falls deserves a lot of the credit. Representative Tim Walberg from Madison deserves a huge pat on the back because he was the one who stood up with righteous indignation on the floor and made the motion to overrule the speaker. And we got it. We had 9 people who ultimately voted for the bill who voted against overruling the speaker. So it was close. Ultimately, 43 votes in favor to pass it off the floor. It now goes to the governor's desk. We are hoping and asking that the governor hold a signing ceremony with photograph opportunities and everything else for people who worked on this really hard to be there at the signing of the bill. Great result. Any questions on airports?
Thank you so much, Justin. That was an incredible effort by everybody. We really appreciate it. It's much needed.
I always tell people, including my wife and children who I leave for 9 weeks to do the legislative session, that this is my favorite. The legislative session is my favorite part of what I do professionally. I've got a law practice as well, but I like winning, and the legislative session is an opportunity to get great wins like this one. So anyway, great result. House bill or Senate Bill 102 is the bill that would change the distribution of the gaming revenues from the city of Deadwood, from going mostly to the general fund to tapering that off to the point where 70% will go to the city of Deadwood for historic preservation and the remaining 30% will go to the general fund. Ultimately, the bill was originally introduced to phase it out completely so that 100% would go to Deadwood, nothing to the general fund. A deal was struck between Deadwood and, between Deadwood and the governor's administration for 30% to still go to the general fund, and then they testified in support of it in both the Senate and House committees. The bill came aggressively out of the Senate with only 2 dissenting votes. The bill then is now came out of the House Commerce Committee or House Appropriations Committee yesterday, with no dissenting votes, and it will be on the House floor on Monday. We anticipate it will pass overwhelmingly and then go to the governor's desk where he is expected to sign it. So great result for Black Hills tourism, for the city of Deadwood. Questions on that one?
And it's being Monday at 2 o'clock, from what I understand, right? On the floor.
Yes. Well,
yeah. No.
Next week they start to go into session earlier. No, you're right.
Okay.
It's 2 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is a bill that we did not get involved in. We may or may not have had it on the tracker. We did not. House Bill 1245. This comes from the Economic Development Professionals Association, from chambers of commerce across the state, and the Municipal League. This bill would give to cities the ability to impose a 1% additional sales tax, with the revenue generated going towards specific projects. For example, if a city decided that they wanted to put a 1% sales tax, it has to be for a limited time. It must be passed by citizen vote. And then I think it's by 60% majority, but I have to go back and look at the bill. It can pay for event centers, community centers, water treatment plants, specific road projects, whatever it might be for infrastructure. It's up to the city And this way they don't have to bond the projects, increase property taxes and whatnot. The bill was introduced last year and it died in the first committee. This year it was worked aggressively. I worked in favor of it on behalf of my other client, the Sioux Falls Chamber, and then many others worked in favor of it. It passed the second chamber yesterday with 19 votes. That's one more than it needed to pass. The bill will now go to the governor's desk, and we are getting indications that the bill will be vetoed by Governor Roden. There's a huge number of groups and individuals from across the state that are contacting Governor Roden and encouraging him strongly to sign this legislation into law. But what I got a call this morning from Mike Bockerny with EDPA asking, would TCSD consider writing a letter of support for House Bill 1245 and asking Governor Roden to sign that bill into law. Even though it wasn't on our tracker, Carmen and I talked this morning. I think the two of us, I don't want to speak for Carmen, would recommend that TCSD join all of the coalition in support of the bill, write a letter to the governor and encourage him to please sign it, not veto it. So I'll kick it to the group now for discussion of that.
Justin, I've heard back from a couple of members of LART. Michelle, I haven't heard back from you yet, but they are 100% in support of writing a letter to the governor so far. So I'm just waiting to hear from two more. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've just briefly looked at it, but from what I've looked at and from what Justin just said, I would absolutely agree that we should support that.
Okay. Perfect. I think that with the stance that TCSD has started taking this year of, hey, we're going to stretch just, we're going to move a little bit beyond tourism issues specifically, and we're going to get into some other areas like economic development and TIFs and some other things that, while they are not directly tourism related, still clearly have an impact. I think this is one of those. I think you're going to see communities across the state that use this option to pay for things that will attract tourists to the community. Carmen and I will work together on that letter. Mike Bockerny wants to take all of those letters to Governor Roden Monday morning and hand deliver them. So we'll work on it over the weekend. Any questions on those three bills? Otherwise, I'll mention two issues for next year to kind of set the stage on things we're going to be working on after the session ends. Okay. First big issue. This thorn in our side of licensure and regulation requirements for hunting and fishing guides is not going to go away. We will continue to have people, because of groups like the Isaac Walton League and others pushing for it, who will want to look at this question. I expect that given comments from organizations like TCSD, that we are willing to participate in a broader discussion of this concept, but we're not going to agree to any bills that are just rammed down our throats with no input from the stakeholders. I suspect based on that we might see those organizations contact us, GF&P, and others. Now, it's going to be difficult to get anything done this year on anything like this, because we could very easily change gubernatorial administrations in 2027. If Governor Roden fails to win re-election, then whether it's Dusty Johnson, Toby Doden, or John Hanson, we could have another governor that we have to work with on these issues. So in election years, it's always difficult to get governors to work on big projects like this, but just putting that out there, this issue is not going away. The second issue is the bid tax bill that TCSD will be spearheading going into the 2027 legislative session. We need to talk about what that bill will look like, whether it's going to be what ran in 2023, or whether it's going to be a modified version of that. There are other stakeholder groups we're going to want to get on board with whatever is run. Not just the municipal league, but some of the, Black Hills Tourism and Elevate and others. So for now, I'm just throwing that out there, that those are our two big things that, in my opinion, we're going to be working on outside of the session for the rest of the year. Any other issues that people think TCSD should really take a hard look at in the off season as possible, preparation for 2027?
I think those two things are going to take up the majority of our time.
It's going to require a lot of discussion.
And I'm trying to get a board meeting together for the end of March to show them all of the outlines that I've put together for the hotel bid piece, and really try to put together some kind of a planning piece to go with all of my community outreach meetings that I'll be scheduling throughout spring and summer of this year.
Okay.
We're ready, steaming ahead. So.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, this has been an incredibly successful session for TCSD. We have won all the fights that we got involved in. We scored a huge victory that, just respectfully, I don't think the governor's office thought we could win on airports. And I think going forward, we've been involved in a lot of things this year that have helped raise TCSD's profile in the Capitol. And I think you're going to see going forward in this, the call that I got this morning on House Bill 1245, the request for TCSD to weigh in with a letter of support on that bill, proves that we are being taken much more seriously in terms of, hey, these are a stakeholder, and we need, tourism is the second biggest industry in South Dakota. If I had a dime for every time I've heard that, I'd be rich. So again, if that's the case, TCSD is the organization. I know that all of the member organizations are crucially important in your particular neck of the woods, but if we want one organization that's going to speak for everybody at the same time, I think TCSD can have a huge voice in that process. So thank you everyone for all of your work.
Well, thank you.
One of the things that I had a question on, Carmen, during the off season, and maybe this isn't the appropriate place to visit about this, but the PAC contributions, is that something that you are working on putting together, and we'll be able to have a game plan here shortly?
Of who we're going to actually give money to? Is that
Yep.
true? Yes.
Yep.
Actually, I'm finishing the score sheet up after Monday. I've got most of it done with all the bills that we supported or opposed or whatever. There's a pretty clear indication of who is with us and who is not with us. And so that's going to make the contribution piece a lot easier for our group to decide on who gets money. We have more money in our PAC than we've ever had, which is great, but I am going to be sending out another major appeal, because it would be nice to obviously keep that up a little bit more, because when we were talking about the amount of money that makes sense to give to those that support us, we need to bump that up a little bit. So yeah, so be watching for that, and be looking for other individuals that might be interested in contributing to that PAC as well. But that's a great question, Casey. Thank you.
The other thing I'll encourage is, in your home communities, if you hear of legislators who are planning not to run again, or there are legislators that have been openly hostile to the tourism industry in South Dakota, and you know of good possible candidates, recruit them, encourage them to run for the legislature, get involved in the process. I won't name names in the current legislature, but we all know who the repeat offenders are in terms of, bringing legislation or taking positions that are openly hostile to tourism. And I think unfortunately, the Black Hills has been a real source of thorns in our side, which is just ridiculous when you consider that that's, coming from Sioux Falls, this is a little hard for me to say, but the Black Hills are the crown jewel of South Dakota tourism, period. So.
Any other questions? Well,
all right.
Okay. Thank you again, everybody. And thank you, Justin. And moving forward. Thank you.
Go team. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.